What is up, everyone? This is Flip, one half the Low Country Diecast Racing League, and we are back here in the race complex, race shed. But we're not racing any cars. I'm out here to show y'all how to make axle tubes today. I know some know how to do it, some don't. So I'm gonna show y'all everything you need to know. Well, I'll show you how I do axle tubes anyway. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but this is the way that Flip does it. So I'll let y'all see all the stuff you need. Definitely gotta have a Dremel. You need some JB Quick, and you're gonna need something to mix it up on. Always keep a razor blade. Be the set of axles we're gonna use today. You need something to cut the axles with, and definitely need something with a sharp point, calipers, a fine tip marker, and 1/16 copper or brass tube. So those are the tools, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, our first step in making an axle tube. See, this car here, it's got the narrow back end compared to the front. So we want to make this back, we want to make this axle as wide as this. So what I like to do is I like to use the calipers here, which mine's messed up, but it doesn't really matter. I like to use the calipers, and I like to measure whatever this distance is. And whatever that distance is, that's what my axle tube is going to be. So, and you can see how much more wider it is. So once you get that measurement and you lock it down, then we can make the axle tube. All right, so once you get that measurement on your calipers, I like to just set them down flat, and then I take my rod, if I can get it to focus there, and I like to set it flat on this piece and let it touch. And then this is where the nice fine tip marker comes into play. So you got to put a mark right here. I like to go just maybe just a hair bigger, so whenever that gives me room to cut or to file and sand to the proper length. I mean, because if I cut it right on the line, then it's gonna be too short, then you got to make another one. So, and then you need two marks right here in the center. I don't know if you could see, but I like to put a mark about right here and about right here, about equal distance on both sides. This will be the part that's kind of in the chassis where the prongs are. So, and you'll see why we put those marks a little bit later. So once you get that marked up, it should look kind of something like that. I don't know if you can really see it. You'll have 3 marks on it. All right, let's go to the next step. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do these first two lines we have. We're just going to barely put a little nick in them like that. And then that's where our sharp point's going to come in. I just like to barely put a nick in them, because if you go too much, then you weaken the tube. So I just like to barely put a nick. And then I take the little sharp point, and I could just poke it through the rest of the way. So there we go. All right, so now once you got your axle cut and you got it filed and sanded down to where it fits exactly in your calipers like it's supposed to. Let me see if I can show you. I mean, you can see that fits perfectly in there. I mean, that's how you want it to fit. All right. Now it's time for the fun part. And that's what your axle tube should look like when you get it cut and cleaned up and to proper size. That's what you should have. Now you want to remember, now your wheels are going to touch on the ends of these tubes, so make sure they're not ragged and jagged and all that good shit. They got to be smooth. Just remember that. I'm not going to tell you what I do, but you'll figure it out. Alright, we got our tubes. Now it's time for our axle. So let's just say this is our axle we're going to put in here. Before you do this, you need to already have your axle polished, or whatever you do to your axles before you mount them into the chassis. You need to go ahead and have it done. So whatever you do. So once that's done, make sure it's cleaned good with alcohol and all that good stuff. Then it's time to cut the axles. So I like to cut them. You don't want them too long. I like to cut about this much. I like to have about that much axle. So I'll get to where I want, and make sure that you hold this, cup it in your hand, because they will go flying. Don't pinch your finger or your hand either, because that won't feel good. All right. So we got the axle cut. All right. So now, there you go. And that's what it should look like. So I'll actually probably trim this one just a hair, because when you put the axle in to the tube here, you don't want the axle, I don't want my axle to go in past that hole. I want it to stop right at that hole. So like I said, you put it in there. There you go. There's one half. Now let's get the other half trimmed. And then after I trim them, I like to make sure that, you know, put them in there like a little test fit. Make sure they're going to fit in there properly. Because once you start with the JB Weld part, you don't have any time to stop and fix anything. So again, I try not to make the axle go past the little hole that we put in the center. Remember the holes that we put? So there you go. So now it's starting to look like an axle. Now let's go to the next step. All right, our next step is the step where you have to be on your game. You can't be playing around, because we're going to be JB welding the axles into the tube. So you need to make sure that you have some alcohol, a clean paper towel, and again, make sure that your axle already is test fitted in your tube and it goes in and everything works great, because like I said, once you start, you don't have time to be playing games. And this is where the razor blade comes in handy, or something flat. So all right, let's start mixing. A little dab will do you. Doesn't take much. All right, put a little bit of black, a little bit of white. All right, where is my little stirring stick? I got my little stirring stick. Make sure y'all are still in the camera. All right, let's mix it up. Make sure it's good and mixed up. Can't half-ass mix it, because if you do and it doesn't set up right, your axles won't stay in your tube. and that won't be good. And then it'll be falling out on the track, and they're all gonna laugh at you. All right, mixy, mixy, mixy. Like I said, make sure you get it good and mixed up. All right, so again, make sure you got your alcohol in your paper towel. So you need to take your flat piece or whatever, razor blade, and I like to scoop a little bit up on the corner. You need to grab your tube, and now you just start. You're going to pack it into, you're going to pick a side. It doesn't matter which side. You just start packing that bad boy in there, and you're going to pack it until you see the JB Weld start showing in the hole. And once you do, then stop. So, like I said, just pack it in there. Pack it until you see it in the hole. Pack it until you see it in the hole. All right, there it is. So once you do that, this is where the alcohol and the rag comes into play. Because you need to clean off all that JB Weld that's on the axle tube. I like to take it, make sure the end of the tube is clean good, like I said, with the alcohol. All right, now we got to do the other side. So flip the axle tube around and start packing. Again, pack it until you see the JB Weld. There it is. All right, so we're gonna put that down, grab our alcohol doused, get it good and clean, make sure the other side's good and clean again. All right, now we got to grab your axle. It's probably not gonna be focused too good. You just grab your axle, push it in there. You'll start getting some JB Weld ooze out of the hole. I don't know if y'all can see that, but it's oozing out of the hole. I just like to just wipe it up. All right, again, take your rag and just make sure that you get make sure there's nothing, no JB Weld on that surface, because if there is, it's gonna be a bad day. And then again, take the other one, shove it in there. All right, and again, you'll see where the JB Weld oozed out of those holes a little bit. Just wipe it up. Make sure it's wiped up. Don't get it on any of the wheels. Now, once you got them pushed in there, you need to make sure that your axle is pushed in far enough. Make sure your axle is not sticking out any, because then you're gonna have too much slop. So once you make sure that both sides are pushed in far enough, you need to take a look and make sure that you got enough play. I like to hold the axles like this, and I want to see just a little bit of my axle between the tube and the wheel hub. You don't want too much. Like that right there is probably just too much. So take the axle and just push it in. So like I said, I just like to barely see a little bit of axle. That's how I know it's where I will need it. See, like this side's too much. So just push it in. And once you get that axle to where it's even on both sides, you need to leave it alone and let it do its thing. So there we go. Let it dry, and when it dries, you'll have your axle set assembly. All right, had enough time to dry, so here we go. There's the final product. Got an axle assembly now. It'll fit right in that revert. Let's see. There you go. Not bad, not bad. So, there we go. A little bit of peacock grease, go a long way. But that's it. And then you can see, like I said, if you hold it up, It's got just a little bit of play, nothing too much. Make sure this side's got about the same. That's all you can do. And then once you get the chassis, you have to get you a file. Oh, and you have to file this right here to where your tube can sit right down in there like it's supposed to. But look at there. But once you get it to where it'll sit down in there, hold on, let me put this right here. See how it'll look. And look at there. The axles go right to the edge like they're supposed to now. Like I said, you get that bad boy where you get it filed to put in there. Whoops, there you go. It'll look something like that. But that's it. That's how you do a set of axle tubes. Hopefully y'all can take that video and use it. I mean, I know it wasn't the best. Video wasn't that great. It was kind of blurry and all that. Didn't focus really good the whole time. But hopefully you was able to see enough to start doing some axle tubes, making some fast cars. So again, appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this helps you. And hey, we'll see you guys at the races.